Yes, we can. I'll mute my microphone now.
Okay. Well, first off, I'm Scott Nguyen. I'm the executive director of One Planet Soul, a Austin-based nonprofit. I just want first to thank you for this opportunity, both the center and then all those that have called in for this opportunity to tell you about some recent results that we had. It's some recent results from a study that we did that looked at kind of the solar adoption patterns here, specifically in Austin. And so the president's presentation itself isn't going to be too long. And so I want to make sure that there's ample time for a good discussion at the end. And so first off, our nonprofit is, like I said, it's an Austin-based nonprofit that was started not too long ago. And our mission is to really try to expand the benefits of solar to underserved communities using market-driven approaches. Right now we've got some very key partnerships with Austin Habitat for Humanity and also with TEPRI. It's the Texas Energy Poverty Research Institute. And we were also recently awarded a grant by the Sunshot program to pilot a new low-income solar program, which I can speak about in the Q&A session. Now, one of the key things about our organization is that our perspective on solar isn't really the conventional approach. Rather than looking at solar in the conventional approach where you've got a single homeowner putting solar on his own rooftop to offset his own electricity costs, the way that we see solar is we see it as a pillar for a much broader community-wide effort where everyone in that community is able to benefit. And so when we started the nonprofit and we're looking at different programs to try to create to pursue our mission. One of the things that we wanted to understand was what the current situation is. What is the current situation in terms of solar adoptions, especially here in the Austin and Texas market? I mean, solar prices, as you guys are well aware, have dropped dramatically in recent years. And that's led to a huge growth in solar adoption at the residential level, and especially here in Austin. And so for this particular study, we wanted just to ask and answer a simple question. Which neighborhoods and which income levels were benefiting the most from solar? Now, fortunately, the data for this, it does exist, and this is primarily because of the fact that Austin has had a very successful solar incentive program in place since 2004, and that is run by Austin Energy. For those that aren't from the Austin area, Austin Energy is the municipally owned electric utility that services Austin and also the surrounding areas, all within Travis County, within Central Texas. I think it has almost 500,000 customers and serves over 1 million residents. Now, the solar incentive program itself, like I mentioned before, it started in 2004. There's a commercial component, but also a residential component. And with the residential component, it provides a upfront rebate, or it provides a rebate to help offset the upfront cost of a PV system when installed by a qualified solar installer. Now, the rebate amount it's capacity based with varying levels. Initially, it started off at about $5 per watt in 2004, and it has steadily come down as each capacity level has been reached. And so currently it is at 50 cents per watt, and 2017 is the end of the current program, and I think they're looking at new programs for the next year. Now, one of the key things about the solar incentive program on the residential level is that these systems, there were definitely significant guidelines that Austin Energy put in place. And so, for example, the systems had to be purchased or financed by the homeowner. Lease systems did not qualify for these upfront rebates. And another important aspect to keep in mind is that third-party PPAs, power purchasing agreements, aren't allowed within Austin Energy's service area. And so the financial structures or business models that Solar City or Sunrun operated in for many of the other states were not applicable within within this particular program. And so, like I mentioned before, this solar incentive program has been extremely successful. from 2004 through April of 2017, which is where our data analysis ended. The program has incentivized the installation of over 33 megawatts of solar on almost 6,000 homes, and has given out $56 million in rebates. And those numbers have definitely gone up through the course of this year. Now, the study itself, what we did was, because of it is a publicly owned utility, we're able to get data on the incentive program, which allowed us to get all the information or majority of the information we would need for the study. And so we obtained this data through a public request for information. And with this, we were for almost 5,800 rebates through April 2017. For each one of those rebates, we were able to obtain the zip code where the installation took place, the rebated PV system size, the amount of that rebate, and the rebate level. The specific residential addresses were not provided. Now, furthermore, we took that and to try to understand the income distribution, we then were able to obtain the median household income for those specific zip codes from the Austin Community Survey from 2015. So we used the median household income numbers from 2015. And so from that year, the Austin-wide median household income was just under $58,000. And so then what we did was we aggregated all the rebate data by zip code and then cross-referenced that to the median household income for that specific zip code. Now, one of the key things about this particular study, and this actually ends up being, this is a similar technique that they've used in other studies for other states, is that what we're doing here is we're assuming that the zip code median household income is reflective of the solar rebated household income. And so this isn't an exact correlation, but we think that it provides a good indicator of the income distribution. And I think when one looks at this, the actual income distribution is most likely skewed to even higher values than the results of this particular assumption itself. So let's take a look at the results. So like I said, so there was almost 5,800 rebates that we looked at. The median rebate was just under $9,000 at $8,800, and the median PV system size was about 5.5 kilowatts. This is the DC peak capacity of the PV system. And so what we then did was we created maps to look at the distribution of both the median household income, but also of the aggregate data from the Austin Energy Solar Incentive Program. And so we have, and all these maps are color-coded by zip code for the median household income relative to the Austin-wide median household income. And that's the graph that you see, or the map that you see there on the left of the screen. We also have maps of the total number of rebates received, the total dollar amount that was received, and that's what you see, that's the map that you see there on the right. The total installed PV in kilowatts, the median rebate amount, and also the median installed PV size per home. And so there is actually an interactive map of all this data, of all these maps, and that can be actually found at the link that's shown at the bottom of the page. Now, if you take a look at the map on the left, this is the map of Austin, and for those that are kind of aware of have lived in Austin for a little while, you'll see that there's you'll easily see the east-west income divide here in Austin, and that generally splits down Interstate 35. And so there's been that the West Austin has been relatively more affluent than those on East Austin. And so if you then take a look at the total amount of rebates, and which is reflective of the solar adoption with the map on the right, you see that there's a very similar geographic distribution as that of the median household income. And so, for example, in West Austin, the zip code, well, throughout the entire program, the zip code 78746, which is on the west side of Austin, that had the largest rebate amount right here at almost $5 million, and also the largest number of rebates of almost 400 total rebates. And for those that are familiar with the Austin neighborhoods, this particular zip code consists of Rollingwood and Westlake. Now, if you take a closer look at the map on the right, there actually ends up being a pretty prominent outlier here um, on the east side. And this zip code here is 78723. Now, this zip code has a median household income that's lower than the Austin-wide median household income. And it has this actually the second highest rebate amount and the number of rebates. Now, one of the peculiarities or one of the facets about this zip code is it includes the Miller community. Now, the Miller community was a part of a very large research study in 2011 that was headed by Pecan Street, the University of Texas, and the city of Austin. And as part of that research study, they've got a whole bunch of, they're able to get a lot of solar adoption. And one of the extra incentives they provided on top of the regular incentive was an extra 50 cents per watt to be part of this study. And so that really did drive solar adoption in that zip code. So from there, what we then did was we aggregated all this data and then split it in terms of zip codes that are above the Austin-wide median household income and also below the Austin-wide median household income. And so in this talk, you're actually going to hear me use the term higher income neighborhoods. This is referencing the zip codes that are above the Austin-wide median household income, and then also we refer to lower income neighborhoods. And so those are zip codes with that are with the median household incomes lower than that of the Austin-wide one. And so here on the graph on the left, you're going to see that the higher income neighborhoods actually received about 75% of the rebate amounts, while the lower income received only about 25%. So from there, you would actually look to see a pretty big disparity. But of course, that's not the full story. And so the very important thing is actually not just to compare this distribution. Well, the very important thing is not to just to look at that distribution. The important thing is actually compare that distribution to the distribution of households of the general Austin population, which is what you see there on the right. And so from here, you see that in the higher income neighborhoods, there was a disproportionate amount of solar adoption rebates going to those zip codes, an amount of 72% of those rebates, even though they only made up about 60% of those households. Now, one of the key things also keep in mind is that in the zip codes below, in the lower income neighborhoods, the Miller community actually makes up 1/3 of the homes in the lower income neighborhood. So without that extra incentive and without the Miller community taking up that huge adoption in 2011, this distribution would even be further skewed and to higher income neighborhoods and and further disproportionate. Now here, in this graph here, we see that the distribution of the rebates across the different levels of income in more detail. And you can see that to the degree of which the program has been skewed to the higher income neighborhoods. What you'll see is that the solar adoption has been driven primarily by the the upper middle class. And in case you're wondering, the Miller district falls within the 40 to 58,000 income bracket, 40,000 to 58,000 income bracket. And then if you below that amount, there's a huge drop off. So zip codes with median household incomes less than $40,000, they actually only make up about 3% of the solar homes. But then when you start to compare the distribution of the solar adoption that I just showed to the distribution of all Austin households, you actually start to see something quite striking. Even though the solar adoption was really much driven by the middle to upper middle class income brackets, if you compare that to the distribution of all households, you'll see that solar adoption is actually underrepresented in all the income brackets except the highest. And the highest is for zip codes with median household incomes above 100,000. And so these zip codes with these highest the highest income neighborhoods, the relative difference between the share of its rebates and the share of the households was actually almost 150%. And so if you look at and then furthermore, with the Miller community, when you look at the bracket between 40,000 to 58,000, that extra incentive that was provided for the Miller community, that's what helped make the solar adoption actually proportionate with the share of all households. Now, in addition to the higher solar adoption rates, the rebates that were received per customer was actually more in the higher income neighborhoods than in the lower income neighborhoods. I mean, so the median solar rebate per home was $9,634 for the higher income neighborhoods, compared with only $7,218 for the lower income neighborhoods. And then that's a difference of over $2,400 or 33%. Now, one of the reasons is because in the higher, as you can, if you look on the map to the right, you can start to see that the reason why there are higher rebates is because the median solar or PV system that was installed for those higher income neighborhoods was actually larger than those of the lower income neighborhoods. So like, for example, even though the distribution is relatively broad, the median PV system for the higher income neighborhoods was about 5.61 kilowatts, compared with only about 5.2 kilowatts for the lower income neighborhoods, a difference of about 8%. Now, the adoption patterns definitely do change with time. And so what you see here in this graph is the income distribution on an annual basis from the beginning of the program in 2004 to the current year of 2017. And so for reference on the right, that's the Austin-wide distribution of all households. And so you can see that the disparity between the the high and low income solar adoption rates have actually improved in recent years. For most of the program through 2014, the share of the rebates for the low income neighborhoods has actually been less than about 20%, while the share of all households within that group have been about 33%. 2011 is that notable exception where it reached 67% because of the high solar adoption rate in the Miller community. But however, in the past 3 years, the share of the rebate for the lower income neighborhoods have actually increased to about 30% and become more proportionate to the share of all households in Austin. And if you take a closer look at the distribution of where that adoption is coming from, this increase has actually solely come from zip codes with median household incomes between $40,000 to $58,000. And this coincides actually with the simultaneous decrease in the share from the zip codes with median household incomes above $80,000. So one of the other kind of small interesting things about the recent adoption is that it's actually occurred primarily in South Austin. I mean, for those that have been in Austin, there's this East Austin neighborhoods generally been stereotyped as the ones that are being most gentrified, and therefore there's kind of a conventional wisdom that maybe the largest solar that would lead to the highest solar adoption. But it turns out that of the lower income neighborhoods, the zip code 78745 and the one right below that, 7874, I think that's 48, which includes Sunset Valley, Westgate, and such. Those have been the largest share of the rebates in the past 3 years. Now, even though the adoption has increased in the lower income neighborhoods, something kind of surprising happens. There's actually a difference in the rebate per home between the lower income neighborhoods, and that difference has actually increased in these recent years. So if you see like in the first half of the program, the median rebate and PV system size per home was relatively similar for both lower and higher income neighborhoods. However, beginning in 2012, the homes in the higher income neighborhoods began installing larger PV systems and thus receiving larger rebates. So for example, in 2017, the median PV system size for higher income neighborhoods was about 7.2 kilowatts, compared with only about 5.9 kilowatts for the lower income neighborhoods. So I mean, at this point in this talk, what I want to do is go back to the graph of the income distribution of solar adoption. Now, I mean, the conventional wisdom, especially here in Texas, I mean, most people will say, yeah, solar is for the wealthy. And so this result isn't such a surprise. And so even though this may be true here in Austin, there's still a quick key question I think is important to ask, which is how does Austin compare to other cities or other states that are adopting solar and also have incentive programs in place? Well, fortunately, there was actually a great study done by Power Scout and GTM Research that was released earlier this year on exactly just that. And so these guys, they looked at the income distribution of California, New York, New Jersey, and Massachusetts with a huge database. And what you see here in these graphs, and as part of the one of the main conclusions from their study, is that solar adoption was driven by incomes between 45 median household incomes between 45 to 150 thousand, and all at a rate that is actually disproportionate to the share of homes in that bracket, which means these incomes were actually going solar more than what their relative share of households of the general population. And furthermore, if you take a look at both Massachusetts and especially New Jersey, you'll see that the share of solar adoption is actually almost the same as that of the share of homes, even in the lower income brackets, especially in New Jersey. So in fact, in New Jersey, 35% of the solar homes were actually below the state median household income. You can compare that with only about 25% here in Austin. And so I just want to now just conclude with two slides or two questions I think that are very important to think about. And so this could actually be part of our discussion is, I mean, what should the solar adoption income distribution look like? I think this is a question that is very important and I mean, there are different ways to think about that and depending upon priorities. And I think this is something that I'm hoping that the city of Austin will also start to think about. And then second question is then what policies or programs would actually lead to that distribution? And so whatever distribution that maybe the city of Austin does decide to try to as to reach as a goal, then it's up to Austin Energy or other municipalities or and such to try to um, devise programs or initiatives that would lead to that distribution. So with that, I think that's pretty much my presentation. You can actually download the full report when if you go to oneplanetsoul.org backslash publications. And if you'd like to learn more about our, or you'd like to learn more or just talk about our research, feel free to email us at info@oneplanetsoul.org. And then finally, just want to put in a plug for our organization. If you go to oneplanetsoul.org, you can sign up to attend the launch event. We're looking to launch a new initiative early next year that will here in Austin. So go to the website and to learn more about what we're doing and sign up for the launch. So with that, I think I will stop and take some questions. Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you, Scott. So just to, it looks like there's a few questions. If you can see them, feel free. Otherwise, I can read them to you.
Okay, so I can definitely, I definitely see them. And so I believe I'm gonna go up to, so James Ornstein, I believe from what Jonathan tells me, the recording will be put on the Next Gen PV YouTube channel. So check with him on that. So then the second question from Kaiba. Hi, Kaiba. So are the income brackets from actual customer info or from zip code averages? So from this study, in which I kind of laid out at the very beginning as kind of the analysis methodology, is that we do not have information on the solar rebates at we don't have the addresses of each rebate level. We only receive the information, the other information. And so with that, the best way that we decided to do this was to look at the median household income of that specific of that specific zip code from the American Community Survey from 2015. So this is so there's been just let me add to that there's been a handful of studies, demographic studies that looked at income levels for solar adoption at different for different states and programs. Some of them, a lot of them have actually have used the same methodology where it's at the zip code level of looking at the household incomes. Others have done things that are a little bit more sophisticated. So, for example, I know that Professor Brun Rai has used customer surveys um, and used some advanced algorithms to help predict um, some of these incomes. So that has there's more detail there. And then the work that was I highlighted from GTM and from PowerScout, they used also some advanced algorithms that help to look at try to estimate kind of a range of what each household income would be. And so there's definitely some work that can be done to do that. It's just a question of what data is available and how much resources is necessary to try to understand um, the problem better. So next question is, One Planet Soul just doing research, or are you working on any policies? And if so, what are they? So right now, so One Planet Soul, like I mentioned, is we started earlier this year. Right now, we have a few things that we do. One is looking at in some of these questions of just understanding solar adoption patterns, and this is our first report into that. Second things that we're looking at is to come up with new programs and initiatives to try to expand that benefits of solar to other to these underserved communities. And one of the ones that we're looking to pilot early next year, and it was funded by the Sunshot Initiative, was to build what we're calling the One Planet Soul communities, and what we're hoping to be able to do is build a community where it's a membership-based community that couples a local customer rewards program with free solar for low-income families through Austin Habitat. And so if you go to the webpage, oneplanetsoul.org, you'll learn more about that program. Okay, how are you accounting for the fact that medium and even higher income people have moved into East Austin? Isn't it likely that those with relatively high income who are getting solar, even they live in Zoka? That's very much true, Kaiba. So the question is, how are you accounting for the fact that more median and even higher income people have moved into East Austin? That's definitely been happening. We are not right now, the analysis that we've done have not looked at uh, the change in the median household income. I think a lot of that has happened in the past 5 to 10 years. And so we have our data from the median household income comes from the American Community Survey of 2015. Now, one of the things that I did mention in the talk was that a lot of the recent solar adoption in 2013 actually happened in South Austin as compared to East Austin. And so if we're interested in trying to take a closer look at specific neighborhoods, I think we do have that data and we can take a look um, at more detailed questions to answer that. So a question from Elben, which has your nonprofit done any research on Austin Energy's community solar program for targeting lower income households, renters, or qualified rooftop solar PV homes? No, our nonprofit has not done that. Like I said, we're new. We are in, we do have discussions with Austin Energy, and I think they're starting to look into the question of how to serve a greater proportion of their customer base. Um, the current community solar programs that they have right now are not specifically geared towards low income. It's just for whichever residents are looking to sign up. And so the their first community solar program was on I think it's the Palmer Auditorium, and that was a program that anyone could sign up for. Okay, so I think that's all the questions. If there's any other questions, happy to answer them now, or happy to, help facilitate any particular discussion on the questions of what we think the income distributions should look like, and or either you can ask the question: is the income distribution that currently that Austin currently has, is that is the status quo good? Is that fine? Is the should it actually be equal across all income brackets, or maybe one has a view that it should be actually skewed the other way towards lower income neighborhoods where it would proportionally have a bigger impact for those residents. So I think those are very important things to think about. And I think as we look further to understand where solar is going, how consumers are starting to adopt this, and it's, as the industry is getting more mature and as the adoption rates are going higher, I think these are being able to have the data that's available and the analysis that complements that is going to be important going forward. Uh, That's an interesting question, Jonathan. Jonathan, just so the question is, do you know what the budget for the program is? Can they offer more money to incentivize it for those of lower income neighborhoods? And does there appear to be of any interest from Monster Energy for this idea? Um, I think so. The program budget, I think it's they asked for these budgets. Like I mentioned, they've given out um, for through my analysis for the period of our analysis about $56 million and probably closer to 60 million thus far. And this is just with the on the residential side. The program itself is ending in this year, and but I know that Austin Energy is starting to look at what new programs that they will try to implement as the city of Austin has re-upped their renewable energy goals. And so they are starting to look into this question and starting to engage with the community on this topic.
Have you gotten any sense of whether or not they would renew the rebate program, or they're just sort of considering it, or
I think they are considering it. I don't, from what I hear, it's not going to necessarily be just a straight rebate that they've had already. I think right now that's what they're looking to do is to consider what the best options are. And so they are actively engaging with the community to get feedback. And so what we're hoping to be able to do is provide some of this information to them to help inform that decision.
well, it sounds like you've answered the questions from the students in the room here at UT. Did anyone else have any other questions? Feel free to either speak to the mic or type them in, and otherwise we'll let Scott go.
So there's how can we contact us? We can contact us at info@oneplanetsoul.org. The one, I think, can you guys still see my screen? So there, if you can still see my screen, you can contact us at that email address. And then just like to read the publication. So you can actually we have links at the webpage oneplanetsoul.org/publications. We have links to both the full report, but also a link to um, the map, the interactive map. It's a Carto-based GIS program that you'll be able to have see all the data that we've aggregated across the Austin zip codes.
And just as an FYI, if you we posted a link to the publication on the Facebook page. So if you found us via that, the previous post was a link to that publication, and it's got those images of the maps as well. So,
And so there's a question from James. Have I seen the LPD, PW similar work, or do I have any comments? Um, no, I have not seen their work. I'm unfamiliar with LPD, PW, so I'm not sure who that is. If there are other studies that you guys have seen that very much forward that to us. We'd like to see how the results here compare with some other work.
So Scott, I
And
had,
then, yeah,
I'm sorry.
no, go ahead. So
Well,
now one thing I wanted to add was um, I one of the things that was very interesting for us to see was when we looked at some of the other data from the other when we looked at the results from the other work was how New Jersey has had a pretty good distribution. And so I think it's going to be very important to start to look at what are those particular details about those programs, either in the behavior for solar adoption by the population or the particular either the structure of the incentive programs or the particular kind of policies in place that have led to pretty well distributed adoption in New Jersey. So for example, I know that there was a pretty good study from Varun Rai in 2013 um, that looked at a number of different factors that led to solar adoption. And one of the key things that I took away from that one of his papers was that he felt that he recommended that leased systems or allowing for leased systems would provide a more uh, would lead to a more distributed solar adoption rate. And so I think those are kind of particular details I think are going to be important to think about.
Great. Okay, and just I guess to mention for those who are still here, Varun Rai is a professor here at UT and gave a talk in our series. So if you'd like to try and learn a little bit more about some of his research, there's a video up on our YouTube channel as well. And we will post this one from Scott on it probably tomorrow or Thursday. So please feel free to tune in there as well. So um, it looks like, Scott, there was one clarification from James. It sounds like that was about the Los Angeles Department of Power and Water. So LA has done some similar studies, it sounds
Okay,
like.
that's great. So we'll take a look. We'll look for that data. I haven't seen from Los Angeles specifically. I've just seen some collective data from California. But yeah, and so we'll take a look. And if you have anything, if there's a specific one that report or paper that you'd like for us to take a look at, please feel free to just email us that document.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks again, Scott. We really appreciate your time, and thank you for sharing your information with our group. And hopefully, in the next year or two, when you have some more data, please feel free to come back and share it with us again.
All right, really appreciate this opportunity, Jonathan, and for the rest, thank you again for the to the center and for everyone that joined in.
Great. Thanks, everyone. As I said, we'll have a video on YouTube in a few days, so keep an eye out. Thanks again.